Welcome back to another episode of the AI Relay. I am Andrew Signori.
And I'm Jonathan Spanos. And Andy, I use AI, it seems like all day recently. I've been using it for a long time. I think most people would say at this point, like, I use AI. I mean, I use it to answer questions. I use it to help me write emails. I use it to even move things around on my desktop now. It can like save things to folders, which is crazy. So I feel like I'm getting really good at it. And at the same time, I keep hearing about agents. It's like, it seems the whole internet is talking about agents. And I'm wondering, like, as a novice, am I just missing out on something? Am I not using agents?
I think that there is a natural progression for people using AI, and as they mature with their skill and understanding of what AI can do. I think most people start using AI with chatbots and using the chatbot as a replacement for like a Google search, right? Like where they would maybe have a question you'd go into Google before you would you do a search, it would come back with a bunch of websites. Hopefully the top result would have the answer that you were looking for. You click it, you'd read it, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Go back and check the second website on that thing. And
Right. Most people are still actually old enough to remember Google. It's that
yeah, of
fast.
course.
It was only 3 or 4 years ago. And honestly, still the biggest search engine on the planet. People are still Google searching.
Right. And I think that initially people were like, oh, Google's in trouble, right? Because you know, people now are getting their questions answered more efficiently by using a chatbot than they would by Google searching and hoping that the web page results would contain their answer. Right.
So
And even
like,
now, Google has incorporated AI into their search where it does its best shot at like answering your question within its search results. But at the
well,
end of the
so
day,
hang on. If I ask a chatbot some piece of trivia,
right.
like, am I asking the internet?
That's an excellent question, right? And that answer has changed as AI has matured, right? Um, in the beginning, especially like chat, like GPT 3.5, when it initially hit, back in November of 22, I think, uh, its capabilities were limited to its knowledge. That model's knowledge was limited to whatever it was trained on, right? So there was a point in time when that training stopped and the model never got any smarter than that, right? So its knowledge had a cutoff date. So if you were to ask it any question that required knowledge after that cutoff date for an answer, the model wouldn't be able to provide it
So,
because
but
it would have
by
no
its
concept that that
knowledge,
thing even existed.
you're referring to a kind of like singular database, let's say. Like each model has a box of information, and that's the information it uses to come up with the answers for you. It can't go outside of that database box.
If you're like on its own, a model just knows what it knows, right?
It
What it
just
was
knows what it
trained
knows.
on. And then when the training stops, the model stops learning, right? It will never learn anymore once the
On the
training
day it does, right? It
on the
stopped on January 31st, whatever. That's the
that's the day.
last day
It's
it
not going to
knows
learn anymore,
anything.
right?
Mhm.
And that was the
So if I
case.
ask about like, if I ask about like February 1st, it won't
It
know
wouldn't know
anything
it
on that day.
based on like with the model's knowledge alone, right? Until models started to get tools to use, and we'll get into that. But one of those tools was web search, and
Mm.
that allowed a model to go outside of its training knowledge and get information to answer a question that maybe it wasn't trained on
From the internet.
from the internet, right? But as like a level one of AI usage, right? Or for like, most people's introduction to AI, it was, I'm going to ask it a question and it's going to come back with the answer. And that was pretty amazing. But that in and of itself isn't what makes AI special. It's not what, the reason why, the stock market gets dramatically affected every time there's like an AI,
Right.
technological improvement
Or
or
or the reason why everyone seems to be racing to, I don't know, incorporate AI or like have agents do things. Everyone's running around trying to like or worried that agents are going to come take my job, right? Like
Right.
what's the special sauce there that isn't included in like, hey, it actually went and found something on the internet for me.
And I think that is like exactly where that people graduate into like the next level of AI usage, and that is like using AI as an assistant to work that you're doing, not just like let me ask it a question and I'm going to get an answer, but maybe you're having AI draft an email for you, or maybe you're having AI help create a function for an Excel spreadsheet or a formula, or like anything really. You're having like AI assist you in completing some sort of task, right? It's not just I have a question and you're going to give me an answer. It's,
Right.
you know, I received this email, help me draft a response, and maybe you'll like cut and paste the email and you'll put it back in. But at
Or
this
maybe
point,
I'm
it's
a
not just
maybe
answering
I'm a
a
small
question
business
with
owner
us.
and I have maybe I'm a small business owner and I have, Excel sheets of my like expenses and my contracts that I've been paid for, and I want a basic, profits and loss kind of analysis, and I don't feel like sitting and looking at all those spreadsheets. I can probably just give my chatbot the Excel sheets and say, hey, could you do an analysis on these for me, please?
Absolutely, you
So
could then,
that's an assistant. I mean, that's like it's literally saying, hey, you're my assistant. Do
and
this
if
for me.
right, and if you think about, what is the difference there? The difference in that example that you just gave is that when we're using chat as like a Google search replacement, right? The only context that I'm giving the model is through my chat, right? Is through the prompt. It's just, let me type in and describe, what it is,
Question I have.
what my question is. And then in
And
your
maybe
example, we're like, instead of me like just typing in words, I'm going to add a file, right? I'm going to add additional context to this conversation, and it's going to be able to analyze that file plus my prompt. And
mhm.
with that is now the context of what the agent is able to do for
Right.
you.
My words plus the documents in this
Now,
case.
right. And it can then generate, right? Because it's generating things. It's not just going to generate a text response. It might generate a third file, like another
Hmm.
Excel file. That is your profit and loss based on like all this data that I just provided in CSVs. It's like it's generated another file, and you can take that file, save it, do whatever you want with it. But in this case, right, it's not just a Google search replacement, because Google could never analyze
Right.
like an Excel spreadsheet and then create a
Right.
profit and loss, and like,
Yeah, you can't copy paste that into a search window and then have it do anything.
of course not. So, that would be like, really the next level of AI usage,
The like AI as an assistant.
the AI as an assistant. And then I think like the level beyond that is when we're talking about like truly like agentic AI. And we, and talk, like, and that is where
Well,
like
like
you're
I gotta say, the assistant sounds pretty agentic magic to me. I mean, I could do all these, give it all these things, and it could produce everything from a simple spreadsheet to like, a whole presentation with
totally.
moving pictures and stuff.
So
So
like,
like, how come I'm not using an agent already if I'm using it as, which I am, for doing different kinds of assistant type of things.
right. Well, I mean, you make a good point. And like, what's probably important for people to understand is like, what's the difference between like me just chatting with like a chat bot with a large language model behind it versus something being agentic, right? What does it mean when something is agentic? And that definition's kind of, matured and morphed over the years.
It seems
uh,
like a hot word right now, though. I
it
mean,
definitely
it
is a
seems to
hot
be.
word. It's like, because that is the, because it can do work. When we're talking about agents can do actual work beyond just answering questions. And I would say that like an easy definition for what makes something agentic is if the model has the ability to use tools outside of its just massive knowledge, its massive brain. Like in every case that we've talked about before, the model is just using its massive brain to generate things within
by
the
receiving
context of
things.
this. Yeah, it's like just within the context of this, of its knowledge,
It's
right?
in like a box, and if you put things into the box, it will do things with the
It
stuff
can
in
do
the
stuff
box.
within the box.
That's the assistant, let's say, because you said like an agent can do work, and like if you ask me, giving something a whole bunch of spreadsheets and having it make a report sounds like work to
Right.
me, right?
Totally. It is, and like
But
it
it's
is
not
doing
agentic
work.
work. It's not
Well,
agentic work.
technically, a what would make it agentic would be is if it is using tools other than a large language model in order to do that, complete a task, right?
Other than
And
its brain, right?
other than
In
the
other
brain,
words.
right? Like so, when you're chatting with a chatbot, the chat exists within a piece of software, and the brain is like the large language model, and that sometimes that large language model could generate a file, but it's sitting in the box still. It's still
It's
sitting
still
in the
inside.
chat,
Yeah, right. Like I
right?
fed
It's
something into it, but it's just it
and
made a
you've got to
file and it's
like take
saying,
it and
"Here's
you're
your
gonna
file. Come and
right
get it." Right.
now. If you gave the chatbot the ability to use a tool to save that file to your desktop,
Right.
now the AI is able to reach outside of that construct, that agent construct, right? And use a tool and do something other than like generate text or generate code and stick it back into this.
So when you say use a tool, right? Because I don't know anything, I'm imagining a wrench or something, right? It's the wrench that gives it the ability to reach across the divide outside of its box. And
Outside of anything really, outside of its like training knowledge, like its knowledge that
well,
it
that's what I'm
received from
calling its
this brain.
box, I guess. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
that is
like
the box.
it's in this little box. You can put things into the box with its brain, and the brain will manipulate those things. But as soon as I see the distinction now that you're saying, like, okay, you made this document and you're showing it to me. Why can't you just hand it to me? And now you're saying an agentic quality is giving it the tool to be able to say, where's the folder you want this on your desktop? Well, I just put it there. Go and
Right.
open the
That's
folder
not
and you'll
the
see it.
ability of a large language model to write files to your computer, right? Like
That's
no
not the
language model, that's not knowledge, right? That is the ability to like
action.
it's an action, right? So when we think about agents, right, we want to think about like an AI being able to do something other than just take
Think.
information and analyze it with its big brain, and it's like, all right, analyze that. Now I want you to do something. This became super important when models started to be able to reason and do multi-step reasoning. So like tool use might be the third step down a reasoning process where it's like, now I need to go and do something outside of my big brain in order to complete this task. And with the introduction of like giving the model the ability to use a tool, now it became an agent. Now it could take a task and you could just tell it the outcome, and it could reason through all of its tools that it has to be like, all right, how do I achieve this outcome? It's not telling me to take these steps. It's not telling me to use these tools.
That's
I'm just going
crazy.
to reason and use the tools that I have in order to get that outcome. And that is where that's sort of like the difference between using AI as just like a search, and then using AI as an assistant, and then using an AI agent. Really, like in it in its in its true like agentic, in the true sense of the word, right? Because I think that like a chatbot has now modern chatbots have agentic properties. I'll give you an example, right? Like web search, it has the ability to like do something outside of its knowledge. That's an agentic property.
Because it's reaching outside of its box to actually, let's say, use a browser and look at the internet, up to the minute internet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it doesn't have a browser inside of its box. It doesn't have its own little world in there.
If it
It
did, it
has to
would
go
be
outside
like
and
an additional tool, like a tool in
right,
its tool belt. Like, hey, I got a
right.
browser here. Hey, I have a file explorer on this person's desktop. It's not something that's built into a large language model. That's something that's been bolted on. It's a tool. So
Right.
that's the model can use the tool, And that's when a model becomes agentic, is when it can like use a tool to do something that is outside the scope of what a model is able to do on its own.
So you said something pretty cool earlier that kicked off a thought that like it can use all sorts of tools and you don't have to necessarily tell it anything in any specific order because it's got a kind of sense of agency and it will make its own decisions. And that made me think like there's a difference between automatic and autonomy. And if there's lots of things that can be automatic, like you can set a folder up to, always save this document out of this project into that folder. Like it's automatic. That's not
deterministic.
AI.
Right?
Yeah.
It's going to do the same thing every time, every single time.
So what you're talking about though with tool use is not this deterministic kind of automation. It's saying, here's a whole like tool belt, like a carpenter or something. And I might throw you 3 totally unrelated tasks. Just do them. I don't want to tell you like, and I'm not going to tell you that for this task, you need that tool. And for this task, you need this tool. You've got your tools, you've got your tasks, do it. And that's an interesting, that's pretty cool in my mind right now. Because what we see is an automated thing happening. We see automation happening before our eyes.
Right.
But
because you didn't tell it to
really
do maybe those things, but
it's autonomously doing it. It's not automated to do it.
Right. And for anybody that's, kind of playing along with the home game, if you're using Claude Desktop, a few weeks ago, they introduced Co-Work, right? And Co-Work is like a prime example of this, where like you could just tell Co-Work, like, what is the outcome that you're looking for? And you could tell Co-Work like, hey, I want to sell I've got like 5 things I want to sell on eBay. I want to price them right. I want to sell it quickly. Figure out what I should price these things, and like, it'll go like, so you haven't told it to do anything other than like to figure out what you should price these things. And maybe you just drop
kind of jump to the end. Let's back up for a second too. Like Co-Work, just so that we're all in context, right? There's multiple different versions of Anthropic's Claude. And on the desktop, and I think also in the web app, there is a Claude.ai app that inside that app is a feature called Co-Work. That sounds like a lot of words to describe something pretty simple. Like it's an app called Co-Work from Anthropic, powered by Anthropic's models.
Right. And this is where too, like where there's the product, there's the model, and then, is it an agent? Are you, and sometimes like, and lots of times like you could be interacting with an agent because it has tools and the abilities to like reach outside the box, but you're not taking advantage of any agentic use of this agent.
If you're just chatting,
if you're just chatting with a chatbot and it's just using its like big brain that it was trained on, and it's not using any of those tools, well, like that's really not an agent, because it's really not using. That's just a chatbot.
You're just chatting with the agent while it has its hands in its pockets.
There. Yeah, because it's not reaching outside of the box. It's not using any of the tools.
So we're back into Co-Work. You go into Co-Work. If anyone has not tried Claude, you should try all the platforms. Right now, they're all moving so fast. Check it out. It's it's moving really fast. And this Co-Work has added so many new features recently in this agentic space, right?
Yes, because it has the ability to take multiple steps, use various tools, and those tools you can augment. And that's what we can get into MCPs at some point down the line. But like, you have the ability to actually bolt on whatever tool you need, or skill that you need, or to an agent to kind of tailor it and customize it for your task. But just to kind of keep things simple, right? Co-Work allows you to like ask for an outcome, and the agent has the ability to do many things outside of its innate capabilities of
its little box, right? Of its little box,
like it's super knowledge, right? Like every time it like the like Sonnet or Opus, these are the models. every time they release new models, the models get smarter, right? The outputs get better. But as far as like capabilities, models themselves can only ever just get smarter, right? It's the like it is
Because
the
they're brains. They're
they're
not
just the
arms. They
brains.
are brains.
When we start talking about like what it is that we're interacting with, that's the software now, and that's where we're bolting on tools,
Hands and feet, fingers and
right?
toes.
Arms, right? We're building, it's like we're building a robot, a
Right.
virtual
A
robot.
virtual robot that can go and reach across your own computer into the internet or up onto different
And
servers and
Co-Work
do things.
is sort of like an AI robot that's already kind of been pre-built. It can do a whole lot of stuff. And you could tell
Mm-hmm.
it to do certain tasks to be like, hey, I need you to go through my mailbox, review anybody that's looking for like immediate response. Then I want you to text me that I have that I need to get back to these three people, or whatever task you
Right. And in that case, like there is a way I would imagine, and because what do you need? You need access to your email. It's not only can you send me a message or put a
right.
file in a folder, but like you need to actually go read all the emails in my inbox. So
And
there's another tool reaching outside the box.
and Co-Work has these tools like built into them, but you need to enable them and be like, yeah, like turn this on and here's my password.
Right.
You need to be deliberate, right? You just don't want to like
There are
allow it to
dangers
do
in this.
things.
There are security risks and dangers, and I guess we haven't really mentioned that to some degree. But the human part of this is so important. The human part of this evolution is so important, and that's one thing. Like we still need to decide what to give it access to. You don't want a wild agent just running around with full access to everything that it can possibly do because you don't really know what it's going to do.
Well, I think when and this is the part where like, all right, like let's abstract it once further, right? We've gone from using AI as a chatbot, as like a Google replacement to I'm using it to help me assist me in my work, right? To I'm actually having it doing tasks for me, like that is maybe reasoning through multi steps and using tools in order to accomplish like a goal, right? There's like another level of agents that we actually haven't talked about, and that's like agents that are just doing things that aren't enabled by chat at all, right? And I'll give you like an example of
That
like
you
where,
like you can't talk to it.
right, it's not there to like think of chat as just one way to interact with AI, right? But it doesn't need to be a chat that,
AI not being the agent, right? So
or an
if we're
agent.
trying to
Let's
follow it
just
in layers, I've got like AI model interface
let's say
somewhere in there. There's an agent.
when we're talking about agents, so let's say an agent, right? And I'll give you an example of how a company might use an agent that that doesn't interact with people, or doesn't really interact with people at all in its function, right? So rather than waiting for somebody to send a text in a chatbot, right? An agent could be sitting there waiting for an alert from a system, like a monitoring system, indicating there's some sort of problem with the system. And that agent receives the alert, and its job is to troubleshoot that problem. So it's been configured with tools to go out maybe to AWS and look at a particular system and read its logs, and come up with a remediation, and then provide that remediation to an operations team. So now that operations team, rather than having to go and troubleshoot this problem to figure out what's wrong, now they're just getting a prescriptive action to take in order to solve a problem that just happened.
Okay, wait. So there's you can have an agent that I can't talk to, but it has a specific way of receiving input.
Correct.
And in this case, it's like an alarm goes off. Some kind of alarm
Yeah.
goes off.
Think of it like a message. It's monitoring a mailbox for a message.
So it has one. That's all it has. Like it's only understanding to the outside is this.
There is no chat bot. Right. There's no chat interface. It doesn't even understand what that is. It's the only input it understands are these alerts that are coming in from the system.
This mailbox. Like
that's
it's just an empty mailbox. It's waiting for letters to drop into the mailbox.
Every time
the mailbox, it reads the letter.
The bell goes off. It says, okay, it's time for me to read this message. and I'm going to read this message and be like, oh, there's a problem with X, Y, and Z. Let me go out to XYZ system and read the logs on that system to troubleshoot and see what the problem is. And then it goes out, it reads the logs, because, oh, I see the problem here. We need to actually reboot this cluster. So let me send those remediation steps on how to reboot this safely to the operations team. So now, rather than the operations team getting an alert, having to do this troubleshooting, go read the logs, go and do this work, to only come to the conclusion of, oh, we need to reboot the system. Now they just get a message
Right.
saying, reboot the node or reboot the cluster.
And at no point, yeah. So there's
And
an
at no
agent
point did
involved in that.
anybody interact with like a chatbot.
Let
But
me make a really
100%, it was an
stupid,
AI
dumbed
agent
down.
using tools
So
to get
here's
an
here's
answer.
a dumbed down imagery for myself to try to understand it, right? So like let's say you have 100 windows and 50 doors in your house, and they're all wired up to alert when they are opened. And there's an agent sitting there that you can't talk to. It can't talk to you. But whenever whenever one of the windows open, it gets the alert. It gets the alert. But the problem in my stupid metaphor here is that like the alert doesn't say what specific window or door is open. It just says something's open. So then the agent, whose only ability to receive input is these alerts, goes and looks at all the windows and doors and figures out which one is open, and then sends me a message and says, it's door number 27
Go
on the east
close
side.
door number 27.
Go close it.
Not, hey, something's wrong. Like
Right.
something's off.
I
Right?
get a specific instruction, but at no
Correct.
point did I ask it like, hey, tell me what door's open. I didn't say, why is the alarm going off? I didn't even know the
Exactly.
alarm was going off.
Right. So in this example, though, there is no chatting with AI.
Right.
But we've built an AI agent that receives an input, uses tools, does to create an output that allows our team to save a massive amount of time when it comes to troubleshooting
The
and
troubleshooting
remediating
problems like
problems.
this.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Trying to find which door or window is open in a mansion.
Totally. But so you can see how AI isn't just this thing that I'm like going to type with and receive a response back. And even like we were talking about co-work before, you can have co-work, you can tell co-work to do a certain set of, like a goal, and it will do a number of tasks to achieve that goal. And then you could tell co-work, you know what? Great. You did it perfectly. I want you to do this every single morning, right?
Exactly the
Schedule
same
yourself
way.
to do it every morning, and it will do that thing every single morning, the same way it did it yesterday. And so now you have like essentially like an autonomous agent that's doing at this point you're not chatting with it anymore. It's just doing its own thing. It's just saying I'm looking for this file, I'm analyzing this file, and I'm creating this output. And the first time I did it with you, I chatted with you, and that's how we created this workflow. And now go and
And
do this
so,
every single day.
and go do that workflow every day.
And now like you have an agent that's doing work for you, and you're not interacting with it like in a chat interface at all, but like you're just taking the output of your agent every day, like I'm the presentation or the emails that were or the the
Whatever that
whatever
morning
that thing
task
is,
was,
whatever
right?
that task was.
So there's a little for anyone who's been using these kind of interfaces and co-work and has seen or experienced skills happening. I mean, you're making me think of skills, because if you ask something to do it, if you say do this exact thing every day, but if you don't codify like the exactitude of that, it will do it differently every day. It'll come to some outcome anyway. But
Yeah,
there is a layer here that's like, it's not really an advanced layer. It is how co-work works. And for this to become a really powerful tool in just everyday kind of lives, just to understand like how skills come into this, which is kind of a bigger topic maybe for a different episode. But I just kind of want to point out for anyone who is currently using it, like take a look and start understanding skills. Because if you have a repeated thing, to come back to that, instead of saying, hey, just remember to do that every day, you could say, look, you did that perfectly. I want it to be done exactly that way. Make a skill out of that and put it on file, and remember and associate it however you do that, Mr. Smarty Pants, that every day when you go to do this, you go grab that skill and you use that like an instruction booklet of exactly how to do the thing. So you do it as darn near close to exactly the same way every day. Am I
Well, I think,
kind of describing skill pretty well?
I think that it probably is worth its own podcast, maybe next week.
Yeah.
Talk about what is a skill, what is a
Mm.
plugin, and what is an MCP.
And what is a simple request for action, right? Because built,
Well, I think
it all
like
begins with I'm asking you to do something.
I think that like a lot of these things are conflated a lot of times. Like the difference between like, what is it, like a skill versus a plugin versus an MCP. Like what,
Or even a tool.
well, right. And I think that when we're talking about MCPs, you're talking about tool use, right? Because like when you break down what an MCP is providing you, it's really just bolting on additional tools for your
Giving
agent
access to
or
different
your right,
or more tools
like yeah, you're like
for your
whatever,
agent.
yeah,
You
or
could say
like let's
agent.
call, like or your Claude AI or your ChatGPT. Like we'll just use that. Once you start introducing tools, we're talking agents. So
Right.
we'll just
Right.
use that term generally. Like you can add tools to agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most frameworks for agents allow you to add stuff on, right?
Yeah,
To
I can
customize,
get I get people new tools for Christmas all the time,
right?
right? Like if I have
Same
an
idea.
agent, I can be like, hey, I got a whole new tool for you. You're gonna be able to do a whole new task for me because I just got you
And that's, I think, an
this
important
tool.
distinction between like what is a skill and what is a tool,
Mm-hmm.
and how a skill plus a CLI is also very similar to an MCP. So
Yeah,
like
that's
we'll get
that's
into
starting
those
to go.
things. I think that's like a little bit more like like a little bit more
Yeah,
advanced, but I think it's important to know that like the out of the box OpenAI or ChatGPT, Claude, those things have some agentic use, and then you can bolt on a different additional tools to just give it the ability to do more and more things on your
right.
behalf.
On your behalf, like customized in a way to your or fitting your needs and workflow or whatever it is. But I guess the underlying part there is like you don't need to necessarily even know that when you're dealing with the interfaces that we've been dealing with all along. Behind the scenes, they have been transforming from chatbots into agents every day while I'm doing the same kind of chatting. So if you were chatting with ChatGPT, 2 years ago, and you're chatting still with it today, you were chatting with a chatbot. Now you're chatting
Chatting with
basically
an
with an
agent,
agent.
right? And the
So
output should be better. If your
right,
only experience was like ChatGPT, you'd be like, "God, this thing is stupid. It doesn't know like, the score from the Yankee game yesterday."
right.
Now it does, right?
Now it
And
does.
because now it has the ability to use a tool, check the web, look at the sports scores from yesterday, and
Hmm.
tell you if you went 2 for 4 or whatever it was.
Right. And so this is how Claude Co-Work is kind of leading the pack at the moment, but we know that this race is on. But nonetheless, Claude Co-Work, for example, this is how it's so powerful. It's because it has like arms and hands and fingers, and it can do more and more virtual physical things. And you're still pretty much feeling like you're chatting with a chatbot. So it's quite comfortable and quite natural feeling because you don't really need, like, it's making so many behind the scenes advances, and our interaction with it doesn't really have to change all that much. As long, again, and kind of the idea of this podcast is like, if you just know how it works, it makes you a better interactor, I
Right. If
guess.
you don't know that within the last 10 days, I'd introduced something called computer use, right? And
Hmm.
now your desktop app can, if you want it to, have full control of your computer. So anything that you can do on your computer now, your agent can do on your computer. Pull up an application and start editing something in Logic, or
I
or
mean,
pull up
and
Microsoft
you
Word,
mean literally on the computer, not like in its
literally
own
on the
kind of thing.
computer.
It's like your actual computer.
Watch the cursor move, and see browsers open, that sort of thing. Where like the agent now is full use. So anything that you can do on your computer, any task or work that you do on your PC, Co-Work can now do on your computer,
This is
which is
something
pretty
to be
wild to
slow
think about.
walked. It is totally wild. It's so wild that like you don't want to just jump in and toggle on all the permissions right away
No,
because again,
but
like you've let
if
something loose on your machine inside your machine.
if you don't know that it's possible, then you won't know its capabilities, right? You
Mm-hmm.
won't know that you could.
Right.
You might
Right.
still be, you know, copying something out of a Word document and pasting it into ChatGPT, and then copying the
And
output
vice versa.
out, pasting it back in.
That's a great example. I mean, I got to imagine because I've done that thousands of times at this point. Like, I got to imagine that there's a lot of folks out there that have become very comfortable almost in their own workflow with like, this is how I do it. I ask it, we refine it. I say, give me a copy paste thing. I copy paste it. I open up Word next to it. I
well,
copy it into Word.
they become the human in the loop, right? Preventing an agent from doing the thing,
Which
right?
it
So
now
human in the
could
loop is
do.
a term, like an industry term
Human
that,
in the loop.
right? HITL is what you'll see it like abbreviated as. And best practice for like most like agentic, autonomous agentic agents is that somewhere along the line you have a human that is reviewing the output and the action that the agent is going to take, right? To confirm that, like, hey, this isn't about to do something we really don't want it to do. Because again, like, agents are reasoning, and it is going to solve a problem. And I think last time I might have given you the example of like um, a cloud storage bucket that is publicly exposed, and our company
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to have any of those allowed. An agent, instead of turning off public access, might be like, oh, we're not allowed to have publicly exposed buckets. I'm going to delete it,
I'm going to
right?
just destroy the buckets.
So I'm going to destroy the bucket, right? And it would be achieving its
It's
MO,
stated goal, right?
right? The
That's
goal
what you
is
told it.
no publicly exposed buckets,
Right.
right? But like, you'd want a human in the loop to identify like that the agent is taking an action, really, that like, even though it's following its mission, that is not the action I wanted to take to achieve the mission.
Right.
So,
So with Co-Work, like if you want to go start, playing around with these different features in Co-Work, keeping in mind of how to be the human in the loop is kind of key, because it's not like there's not a human in the loop button that you push. You
right.
have to think through the process and say,
At
at
what
what point do I need to be inserted, and how am I going to achieve me being an actual gate between this side and that side?
Right.
Because
So
it
rather
might be
than
enough to
say
just say, tell me
review
before you
my
do it.
inbox and reply to all of the people that are looking for responses from me, you could say review my inbox and write drafts for all the email that I need to get back to people to, and put them in my drafts folder.
Right.
And
And
that would
then
be the
you
direct.
have to go
So
to
then, okay,
read
like,
the
oh,
draft.
right now I'm reviewing and hitting send, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't trust my agent to just go and do it on its own. Now, if I told it to do that and it did that 1,000 times, and I went and reviewed the inbox 1,000 times and hit send, and all I ever do is hit send, eventually I'm going to be like, you know what? Don't write it to my drafts. Just send the message, right? You do such a good job of it. I never changed the message. Just send it. But if you went in there into your drafts folder and like 5 out of 10 times you're like, I got to rewrite that, and you're amending it, you wouldn't stick with that either. You would go back to your original like Co-Work, you know, prompt and say, like, your emails stink. Here are some examples of good ones, and here are some examples of like the ones I really don't like.
Right.
Write them more like the good ones, and then the output then would then start becoming more and more like the output that you're looking for. Again,
Human in the loop.
eventually getting to the point where you're like, all right,
Mm.
it's perfect now. Just send the message. Don't save it to
So,
my drafts.
so human in the loop is kind of both the safety valve, right? You're the security guard at the gate. And it's also the refinement mechanism, because you are there just
Yes.
reviewing, iterating, going back, iterating until you're finally ready. It's a little bit, it's making me think of like a kid with training wheels. You just keep helping it get perfect to where you see the training wheels are no longer touching the ground. You let that happen for another couple of weeks, let's say, without telling the kid that they're basically riding the bike. You might even move the angle of the wheels and they think that they have the wheels. And then
Yeah.
at some point you say, I now trust you enough, or I'm confident enough that if I lose sight of you around the corner, you're not going to fall down. So we're
Or
taking these training wheels off.
that, and also like I'm recognizing that the training wheels are actually never hitting the ground. The kid's riding the bike,
Right.
and the training wheels are just like they're just there. And
That's
so like then just remove the training wheels. Because all I ever do is say approve, approved, 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 approved.
Right.
And like I said, if it doesn't get there, then you should be iterating on your process
and refining the process. So you're moving from more human in the loop to less human in the loop, and maybe in like a, I don't know what the word is, contrapositive or something, but like the more human in the loop, the less agency. The less human in the loop, the more agency, and it's got like a slider like that. So as you progress your process to being less and less involved, you're actually progressing the agentic.
You could think of it that way, but you can also say, well, I'm going to insert the human in the loop right at the point where something could potentially be disastrous. So you could say you can have it having a whole lot of agency, an incredible amount of agency to come up with the template that I'm about to execute on. And then that's where I'm like, but I'm still going to insert myself.
You're still there.
Right. So like at that point, you can continue adding more and more agency as long as there's a human in the loop there, preventing the last step, the execution of the thing that it just built, or, the template that it wants to run, or the command it's going to run, the
email it wants to send.
Right. Yeah, like the thing that which you would be like, oh, that was the point at which it is a problem.
I'm responsible for that.
Right. Like the email where the agent has cursed out your best customer is not a problem until it hits send. It's only a problem when it's sent. Like you catch it before it's sent.
Human in the loop is for when a human's ass is on the line. That's what human in the loop is.
So you could give the AI like a ton of agency in order to craft the message, to be like, I'm gonna look up the customer in our CRM system to find out all the information I know about the customer, so I can ask how his dog is doing in the email. You can give an agency to be like, I'm also going to go and check his sales records in our sales database to be like, hey, I noticed that you're buying a little bit less than. Is there anything we could do to get our orders back to where they were 16 months ago? You can again provide more and more agency to your agent, but still insert yourself as a human in the loop.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like granting it any more agency. It's like I trust it enough to complete its task, or I don't trust it enough to complete its task. Like you might not need very much agency to complete its task, or it'll do a much better job with more and more agency. But again, like you're the human in the loop saying like at this point is where it's problematic.
This is a recurring theme I think throughout AI, and I think it will always be. It's where is a human and what role do we play? How important are we? And like in this regard, it's the output. The output. AIs don't have judgment of aesthetics other than pattern matching. So aesthetics meaning like, is it quality? That's all I mean. It could be a business report, whatever, but like it's the human still, at least, is the one that's going to be able to judge, like, is this, not only does it check the required boxes, but like, is it the thing I want? Does it sound the way I want? Does it look the way I want?
What taste is like perfect example of like taste is subjective. Is anything like objectively ugly? I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's
but when it comes to your brand,
that's why like a terrible prompt would be like, make this website look great.
Right.
What does a great website look like? That's different,
you know?
Right. So
so the human in the loop will remain in such a capacity that it's transforming what humans do at work, but it's not necessarily like throwing us all out the door.
I mean, I work in technology for a big company, and I think that there is some anxiety around agents taking our jobs. And like what has like kind of been the mantra for like the last year and a half is that like, well, agents might not take your job, but someone using AI might take your job, right? And
Right.
that's
Someone who understands how to uh,
leverage
manage
AI to
agents
right
and leverage
leverage
AI.
AI to like to help them do whatever that is that you do. If you're an
Well,
accountant
and so
who
like,
uses
yeah,
AI
like
versus an accountant that doesn't use AI, hire the accountant that uses AI. You know,
this is a perfect like loop back because that's what we say. Like, oh, I use AI. And then 2 years ago, using AI was as an assistant. Help me write this thing. Help me iterate it. Give me a copy paste. I'll take it out. I'll drop it in my thing, and in my folder, and do what I'm going to do with it. Now we're moving to this agentic era, where I use AI is I'm using agents. Maybe even if I don't know that I'm using agents, I'm using agents. It's giving me information from the internet or whatever, whatever. So like the what you just said, like the person that's going to take your job is a person who not only knows how to use AI, but is today's conversation anyway is someone who is understanding agentic capabilities of AI and implementing them in all different multidimensional
right? Because it's
capacities.
if if you augment your domain expertise with an agent that's able to do things for you and you can direct it to do things for you, so it's
Mm.
you are the tastemaker when it comes to your domain expertise. You know what good is, right? So if you're someone who is like enabled with AI, that's like a massive productivity domain,
Right, because
productivity
AI
unlock,
doesn't really
rather.
have that kind of AI doesn't have experienced domain the way that humans do.
Right, it
What we
does it
bring to the
like
table, AI
it
just does not.
right, it like it's not going to be a tastemaker.
Right. It
That
could
is
learn your branding, and it can give you the outputs that help you get there faster, but you're
for
still
sure.
going to wind up being that last gate of quality and trust too. It's not just always this good, but like, you know, you just have false information in what you're doing or whatever. The human needs to be there to see all that and pick up on that right at the end. But the quality of using AI there goes into like, go start using co-work now. Go start using some of the deeper qualities that chat. OpenAI is trying to catch up with Claude Code, at least with some of these little more developer, let's say, sides
The
of
codex and
agentic
things like that.
qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the everyday use, let's say, I think right now co-work is where to go, because using AI now isn't like how we were just 2 years ago, copy pasting or whatever. It's understanding these sort of agentic qualities that a Claude.ai co-work piece of software can do. Because if you're in your office or whatever job, and you're starting to learn now how to connect it to your inbox, how to connect it to your Google Drive, how to connect it to Google Docs and Word or whatever, so that it can start doing these things in an autonomous, automated way. Those are the skills that are going to take someone's job. It's not I use AI. It's I actually know the little connectors and the little buttons to push to set up a whole project
Or
that
that
then
you
just
know how to
works.
you know leverage AI to like to unlock a productivity you know
X productivity,
10.
because if you've
Right.
got this, yeah, right.
And
It's
like that's the next. Now I do think that like eventually like agents will be managing agents. Humans won't necessarily need to be managing agents. Agents will manage agents, but like we're not there yet.
I
Like the
think a
next
human will
step
still be
is
managing that layer of agents, right? Like
something. They'll probably
it'll
be like
it'll layer its way in, but the humans will still be like making sure someone. We're not ready to take off those
they
training wheels entirely, I think.
there's a lot of talk of like the first like $1 billion solo entrepreneur, right? That was going to happen with the advent of AI. That you were going to have like like a one man company that's worth $1 billion. And I think that eventually we won't be talking about that. What we'll be talking about is like the zero man company,
Right.
the set it and forget it, the Ron Popeil company of like I'm gonna set this thing up and like a top, I'm gonna spin it and it's just gonna go.
Yeah.
The zero man company that is just AI running, making all of the decisions. That will happen too
Yeah.
eventually. But anyway,
Yeah.
we could probably wrap it up there.
Yeah, we can wrap it up. I think just try to recap it. I guess there, as we're learning to use this technology, it's what we keep coming back to is how we can be improving ourselves so we get better outputs. And so understanding these sort of striations from what we laid out today was like search, assistant, and agent. It's not that it's some kind of hierarchy of better or worse. It's just knowing, how you're kind of fluidly moving through your interaction with it. If you open it up because you just need to find the nearest restaurant, you're using it like this. If you're really going to get into a project where you want it to be doing deep analysis by using external tools and then actually putting things in folders or whatnot, that's you engaging a more agentic quality of it. And I do think it's kind of a gradient. It's like, how are you sliding that fader up and down of the agency of the model that you're currently riding
especially
on.
now that that line has been sort of grayed,
Yeah.
because chatbots have been augmented with things like web search, which by definition would make it agentic, because it's outside of its trained knowledge. But yeah, I think that there's a sliding scale to the point where co-work, again, you're not telling it what to do, you're giving it a goal, and it's coming up with what to do in order to achieve that goal on its own, and you've just given it tools to give it some reach outside of the box.
Yeah, you really need to take it for a ride, everyone out there. Go and check out Co-Work and take it for a ride and see, feel what it's like. And maybe we do a little like a little walk through the way you built the app. Maybe we do like a little Co-Work project in another episode or two from
Sounds fun.
To walk people through it. So the ethical part is always human in the loop. Like, check your references always meant something. It still does. Whatever it puts out, you're responsible for it. So as these things become more autonomous and agentic, don't think that it's not your fault.
Right, you're going to be responsible for the output. You're not going to be able to be like, the model
agent did it. The agent ate my homework.
Right, the model has like a permanent card of like, I'm just a dumb model. Like it will never be
innocent.
No one's ever going to be okay with like, I didn't check the model. The model just provided that output.
Oh, someday we'll have agent prisons somewhere in some server. You have to go sit out.
Time out for the agent.
Right. All right, we almost never say what are you supposed to say? Like, subscribe.
If you made it this far, seriously, if you made it this far, like,
we really appreciate everyone who's making it all the way to the end of these. I know we go about 50 minutes, but we love talking to each other and we love talking about this stuff, and we hope we're talking about things in a helpful way. That's the whole point of this podcast. So yeah, if you have made it this far, thank you so much. Sharing it, I guess, is a really good thing for the algorithm. That's what
leave a comment. If you have any questions, we will reply to those comments.
Questions or requests for something that you guys want us to talk about. And that's about it, Andrew.
All right.
It's great talking as usual, man.
All right. We'll see you next week.
All right.
How you doing?